Title of this episode, If's Power Suits Women Changing the Office. Today we celebrate feminine beauty in this theme and era. Expressed through style, elegance, posture, and presence. In the 1980s, the workplace became a new stage for feminine elegance, where women not only entered boardrooms in greater numbers, but redefined the image of authority itself. The unforgettable presence of women in power suits was not simply about employment or efficiency. It was about claiming visibility, reshaping expectations, and carrying grace into spaces long defined by men. Feminine beauty in this decade meant confidence structured into tailoring, warmth expressed through a firm handshake, and elegance in every detail that transformed the office into a new theater of style. The promise of the 1980s is captured in the figure of the professional woman walking into a corporate lobby with shoulders squared in a tailored jacket. At a glance, she embodied aspiration, independence, and sophistication. The suit she wore was more than fabric. It was a social signal, blending strength with refinement. Women were not stepping into anonymous roles. They were changing the culture of the workplace by infusing it with presence, intellect, and a distinctly feminine command of elegance. This was not about erasing softness, but about pairing it with structure, making beauty inseparable from authority. Throughout history, clothing has been a language of its own, and in the 1980s, power suits spoke loudly. Consider how, just 2 decades earlier, women had only begun to push against rigid workplace dress codes that often limited them to skirts, stockings, and modest blouses. By the 80s, however, a transformation had occurred. Feminine beauty was no longer confined to domestic ideals or understated roles. It was expressed on trading floors, in advertising agencies, and at conference tables. The power suit became a uniform for ambition, granting women a visible place in environments where their voices had long been minimized. The question then was not simply what women wore, but what those garments declared, that elegance could be authoritative, and posture could communicate leadership as clearly as words. This cultural shift in style emerged from a convergence of social and economic forces. The 1980s were marked by rapid corporate growth, globalization, and the rise of financial centers. Women were increasingly part of this story, not only as employees but as professionals shaping decisions and outcomes. The suit became their armor, their badge, and their signal of belonging. Yet, unlike the suits designed for men, these garments carried unique feminine refinements. Lines that suggested elegance rather than bulk, fabrics that flowed as much as they structured, and colors that softened what might otherwise have been stark. In this way, the look remained unmistakably female, celebrating beauty not by concealing it, but by aligning it with presence and power. Design houses and fashion magazines captured and amplified the phenomenon. Designers like Giorgio Armani and Donna Karan created collections that translated masculine tailoring into feminine form, with padded shoulders, cinched waists, and wide lapels that created silhouettes both commanding and graceful. The language of fabrics shifted toward wool blends, silks, and gabardine, chosen for durability yet styled for elegance. Color palettes often emphasized navy, charcoal, and ivory, but the details, a patterned scarf, upper layering, or a subtle sheen, added warmth and personality. Beauty here was not incidental, it was integral, the quiet assurance that style could sit at the head of the table. The look itself began with the jacket. Structured shoulders symbolized authority, while fitted waists reminded the world that femininity and leadership were not opposites. Skirts often fell just below the knee, conservative enough for corporate codes, but cut to allow movement and comfort. Trousers, though initially controversial in some circles, gained acceptance as women proved that elegance was not limited to a hemline. Blouses, often made of silk or chiffon, added softness beneath the structured jackets. The famous bow-tie blouse, known as the pussy bow, became a signature piece, balancing strength with charm, and reminding colleagues that professionalism could indeed carry a feminine voice. Accessories completed the ensemble, never overwhelming but always deliberate. Modest jewelry, stud earrings, thin gold chains, simple watches, added polish without ostentation. Shoes were often pumps with moderate heels, designed to carry women through long hours yet preserve poise. Handbags shifted toward structured leather designs, functional enough for documents, but elegant enough to signal refinement. Even hairstyles played a role, with carefully arranged looks that framed the face and reinforced the theme of composure. These choices were never frivolous, they were strategic, allowing women to move through office spaces with assurance and authority. Curiosities of the era underline the significance of this style. In 1984, Time magazine featured the professional woman in a power suit as a visual shorthand for changing social roles. Advertised campaigns of the decade often showed women in sharply tailored outfits holding briefcases, a striking departure from the images of secretaries or assistants that had dominated earlier portrayals. Even television series like Dynasty popularized the look, linking feminine beauty with leadership and influence. The suit was no longer just clothing, it was an emblem of transformation. By the close of this first reflection, one can see that the power suit of the 1980s was more than a garment. It was a cultural signature. It signified the beginning of a larger conversation about women in authority and about beauty as a component of presence, not a distraction from it. The cut of the jacket, the palette of fabrics, and the careful pairing of accessories formed only the first layer of the story. What remains to be explored is how this look shaped behavior, environments, and culture. The ways in which women carried their elegance not just on their shoulders, but into the very rituals of daily professional life. Arriving again in the world of the 1980s, we see feminine beauty carried into the office not only through style, but through the confidence of women who reshaped how authority itself was seen. The look of the power suit continued to evolve as the decade unfolded. Designers experimented with broader shoulders, creating silhouettes that gave women a clear physical presence in rooms traditionally dominated by men. Yet these bold shapes were balanced with soft fabrics and flattering lines that emphasized elegance. The jacket remained central, but details such as pleated skirts, tailored trousers, and double-breasted fronts allowed women to adapt the look to different contexts. Accessories, too, became more expressive. Belts cinched waists, scarves introduced splashes of color, and handbags combined function with sophistication. Women wearing these ensembles were never simply blending in. They were defining what professionalism looked like when expressed through feminine grace. Shoes were chosen with care, as they had to support long hours while projecting refinement. Mid-heeled pumps in black or navy became standard, while softer tones such as beige or cream were added for variation. Jewelry was deliberately understated, chosen to complement rather than compete. A string of pearls or small gold hoops added warmth to an otherwise structured presentation. Hair was styled to frame the face, often with volume that echoed the boldness of the suit itself. Every detail contributed to the larger message. Beauty and authority were not at odds, but partners in a new vision of leadership. Yet clothing alone did not define the era. The culture of the office was equally transformed by the women who wore these suits. In New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, skyscrapers filled with financial firms and advertising agencies saw increasing numbers of women stepping into professional roles. The open-plan offices and glass-walled conference rooms of the 1980s were stages where women demonstrated competence, diplomacy, and authority, all while embodying elegance. The rituals of daily work changed as well. Morning commutes on crowded subways or through busy parking garages saw women balancing briefcases and handbags, their suits pressed and ready for the day. Elevators became silent theaters where polished shoes and pressed jackets spoke of ambition before a word was exchanged. Etiquette was vital in these spaces. Meetings demanded presence, posture, and clarity. Women were often the first to arrive, ensuring that materials were ready, but once the meeting began, their participation went beyond preparation. They asked questions, gave presentations, and directed discussions. The suit provided an exterior shell that supported these actions. But it was the women themselves, their composure, their voices, their warmth, that turned attire into authority. Lunch hours in the 1980s often meant quick meals at corporate cafeterias or short walks to nearby cafes, where groups of women in suits could be seen laughing, discussing deals, or reviewing files. Their presence in public reinforced the idea that the professional woman was no longer exceptional. She was part of the fabric of urban life. One cannot forget the sensory details of the time. The faint scent of freshly printed memos, the clatter of typewriters still in use alongside early computers, the sound of telephones ringing on desks. All these created the environment where women in suits moved with grace. Magazines such as Working Woman and Fortune regularly featured articles about professional style, reinforcing the notion that attire was a key part of corporate life. In 1986, Donna Karan launched her 7 Easy Pieces collection, which became a cornerstone for professional wardrobes, showing women how a small set of garments could be mixed and matched to cover every professional setting. Feminine beauty was celebrated not in excess, but in the careful balance of strength and elegance. In this environment, the power suit became more than clothing. It became ritual. Preparing it in the morning was a process of aligning inner confidence with outer presentation. Buttoning a jacket, adjusting a scarf, or checking a watch became acts of readiness, small gestures that built momentum for the day ahead. Even the act of walking through a lobby or stepping into a meeting room carried symbolic weight. Women were not only entering spaces, they were altering how those spaces operated. Authority now had a new face, framed by elegance, and the world took notice. By the end of the decade, the power suit was no longer seen as a novelty, but as a norm. Its presence in magazines, television shows, and advertisements cemented it as part of cultural memory. Yet the influence of this style was never only about fashion. It was about how women moved, how they spoke, and how they carried themselves in spaces of negotiation, creation, and decision-making. Feminine beauty became inseparable from professional competence, proving that elegance could be as powerful as strategy, and posture could communicate as clearly as policy. This sets the stage for understanding the broader impact of the power suit, how it traveled beyond office walls, influenced advertising, media, and public perception, and left behind a legacy that continues to shape professional style even today. The story of the 1980s is not complete without grasping how this look became a cultural signature, and how women used elegance to change the very nature of work itself. Once more, we return to the world of the 1980s, where feminine beauty found expression in the structured elegance of the power suit, shaping not only offices but entire cultural expectations. The impact of this look extended far beyond the workplace. Women in power suits began appearing on magazine covers, in television dramas, and in national advertising campaigns. Their presence symbolized competence and authority, while still celebrating charm and grace. When a woman in a sharply tailored jacket looked into the camera from the pages of Vogue or Fortune, she was not only modeling clothing, she was modeling a new possibility. Department stores devoted entire sections to professional wardrobes, encouraging women to see the suit as essential to success. Feminine beauty was no longer only about evening gowns or leisure, where it had become central to the story of economic independence. The influence spread into behavior and habits. Office windows displayed mannequins in tailored jackets and silk blouses, reinforcing to every passerby that this was the image of modern success. Television shows such as Dynasty and Law portrayed powerful women whose beauty was defined by authority as much as appearance. This visibility influenced how younger generations of women imagined their own futures. They could envision themselves not only as secretaries or assistants, but as executives, lawyers, or financial analysts. Roles once considered out of reach. Feminine beauty in the 80s was aspirational. A blend of elegance and power that carried meaning for millions. Beyond style, the power suit created ripple effects in consumer culture. Cosmetic companies marketed subtle yet polished looks designed to complement structured attire, emphasizing natural tones that projected confidence without excess. Perfume ads spoke of independence, sophistication, and presence, linking scent to empowerment. Even the design of office equipment, from slim briefcases to compact organizers, reflected the neediness of professional women. The rhythm of everyday life was touched by this shift. The briefcase, once a symbol of male authority, became just as likely to be carried by a woman whose poise and attire gave it new significance. What made the power suit so resonant was not only its fabric or shape, but the way it reframed authority. In earlier decades, authority often meant conformity to male models of dress and behavior. In the 1980s, women redefined authority by blending structure with softness, strength with grace. A navy jacket with padded shoulders might signal command, but paired with a silk blouse and modest jewelry, it expressed warmth as well. This balance became the essence of feminine beauty in the workplace, assertive without losing elegance, commanding without losing charm. First, the signature of the jacket itself. Strong shoulders and a fitted waist created a silhouette that commanded attention the moment a woman entered the room. This was the first feminine signature of the look, structure that expressed confidence. Second, the detail of the blouse. Silk fabrics, bows at the neck, and gentle colors softened the austerity of tailoring, reminding everyone that professionalism could still carry warmth. This was the second feminine signature, softness paired with authority. Third, the accessories. Jewelry, handbags, and carefully styled hair added individuality, ensuring that no two women looked alike, even if the cut of their suits was similar. This was the third feminine signature, personnel expression woven into uniformity. These three signatures together defined the visual memory of the decade. They were not mere fashion choices. They were elements of a cultural language that declared women belonged in positions of influence. The look communicated assurance before a word was spoken. It shifted expectations, reminding colleagues and clients alike that elegance and intellect could walk side by side into any boardroom. The resonance of this feminine beauty continues even now. Modern suits may have slimmer lines and lighter fabrics, but the foundation laid in the 1980s remains. Every woman who chooses a tailored jacket for a presentation, every professional who adjusts her blouse before a meeting, is echoing a legacy built in that decade. The spirit of the power suit lives on, not because of nostalgia, but because it still communicates what it did then: readiness, presence, and poise. What lingers most, however, is the emotional synthesis. The image of a woman stepping into an office lobby in 1985, her suit neatly pressed, her stride measured, her presence undeniable, still holds symbolic power. She was not only walking into a day's work, she was walking into history. By aligning beauty with authority, women of the 80s did not erase femininity, they elevated it. Their style told the world that grace was not a weakness, but a strength, and that posture, presence, and elegance could lead as effectively as any title or office. The legacy of this look reminds us that feminine beauty is timeless when it embodies both strength and warmth. It inspires us to look forward, to explore other eras and themes where women carried elegance into the world and left behind indelible marks of presence. The story of the power suit is complete, but it is also part of a longer journey, the continuing celebration of women who, through beauty and style, changed not only how they looked, but how the world looked at them.